Can you even spell in Japanese, little girl? Or should I ask something easier, like how to clean a toilet properly? Professor David Harrison's voice cut through his mahogany study like a whip. 12 guests in designer suits turned to stare at the small black girl sitting on his Persian rug. Kesha Williams looked up from her homework. Around her, crystal glasses caught chandelier light while distinguished academics waited for her humiliation. I mean, seriously, Harrison continued, swirling his wine. What could the maid's daughter possibly know about one of the world's most sophisticated languages? His colleagues chuckled, feeding off his cruelty. Maria Williams froze mid-step, silver tray trembling in her hands. 20 years of cleaning for wealthy families, and she'd never heard such venom directed at her child. But Kesha didn't cry, didn't shrink. Instead, she reached for Harrison's expensive calligraphy brush. May I show you something, Professor? The room fell silent. Harrison's eyebrows shot up. Show me what exactly? His tone suggested this was the most ridiculous request he'd ever heard. Kesha stood slowly, her small frame dwarfed by the towering bookshelves. You asked if I could spell in Japanese, sir. I'd like to answer your question. The academics exchanged amused glances. Someone whispered, "This should be entertaining." Maria stepped forward, panic flooding her voice. Kesha, no, we need to go home now. Let her try, Harrison said with theatrical generosity. He gestured grandly toward his antique calligraphy set, displayed like museum pieces on mahogany shelves. By all means, little one, show us your spelling. Dr. Helen Morrison, a visiting linguistics professor, watched with growing curiosity. Something about the child's confidence felt different. Authentic. Kesha approached the calligraphy station with reverence. Her fingers traced the brush handle before lifting it with practiced care. She prepared the inkstone with movements that seemed oddly familiar, methodical. Careful with that, Harrison warned. It's worth more than your mother's monthly salary. The room held its breath as Kesha dipped the brush. Her first stroke was confident, fluid, then another. The black ink flowed across rice paper in elegant curves that made several guests lean forward. This wasn't childish scribbling. These were perfect kanji characters forming before their eyes. Harrison's smirk began to fade. Where did you learn? My grandmother taught me, Kesha said softly, never looking up from her work. She said every word carries the heart of the person who writes it. The brush danced across paper with impossible grace. Complex characters emerged in flawless proportion, each stroke demonstrating mastery that took most students years to achieve. Dr. Morrison's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. She recognized excellence when she saw it. Kesha finished with a flourish, setting the brush down carefully. She'd written not just random characters, but a complete haiku in classical Japanese script. The silence stretched like a held breath. Harrison stared at the calligraphy, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and something approaching fear. How was this possible? What does it say? Dr. Morrison asked, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. Kesha's small hands folded neatly behind her back. Evening shadows grow, but wisdom lives in small hands. Grandmother's gift blooms. Harrison's wine glass slipped from his fingers, red liquid spreading across Persian silk like spilled blood. That's not possible. You copied this from somewhere. I didn't copy anything, sir. Kesha's voice carried quiet dignity that made the adults shift uncomfortably. I wrote about it tonight. About this moment. The calligraphy before them wasn't just accurate. It was artistically masterful. Each stroke flowed with confidence that spoke of years of training. The seasonal reference, the emotional depth, the perfect classical structure. This was graduate-level work. Dr. Morrison stepped closer, her trained eye analyzing the brushwork. The stroke order is flawless. The proportions are textbook perfect. She looked up at Harrison, whose face had gone pale. David, this is professional quality. Impossible, Harrison muttered, but his academic pride was cracking. She's 12 years old. She's the cleaning lady's daughter. Age doesn't determine ability, Professor, Kesha said simply. Grandmama Akiko taught me that wisdom doesn't care about your birthday. The name hit the room like lightning. Akiko, Japanese. Dr. Morrison knelt to Kesha's eye level. Your grandmother was Japanese? Yes, ma'am. She married my grandfather after the war. Her family in Japan disowned her for loving a black American soldier. Kesha's voice carried the weight of inherited pain. She poured all her culture into me because I was the only one left to carry it forward. Harrison found his voice, though it trembled. Anyone can memorize a few characters. Real mastery requires understanding context, cultural nuances. Like how sayonara implies permanent farewell? Kesha interrupted gently. You use it when you never expect to see someone again. For see you later, we say mata ne. For formal goodbye, shitsurai shimasu. Each carries a different emotional weight. The room's oxygen seemed to evaporate. Write your name, Dr. Morrison requested, fascination replacing skepticism. In different scripts. Without hesitation, Kesha picked up the brush again. She wrote her name 3 times, flowing hiragana curves, angular katakana strokes, and complex kanji characters. Hiragana for Japanese words, she explained, pointing to each version. Katakana for foreign words like my name. Kanji for meaning. I chose characters that mean precious and season because Grandmama said I was her precious gift that would bloom in every season of life. Harrison's hands shook as he reached for his phone, frantically Googling stroke orders and character meanings. Everything checked out. Every single detail was perfect. This is graduate-level cultural understanding, Dr. Morrison whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The kind of intuitive knowledge that takes decades to develop. A guest in the back called out, "Ask her something harder." Harrison's pride twisted into desperation. He grabbed a thick academic text from his shelf. Advanced classical Japanese poetry from the Heian period. Translate this passage, if you're really this skilled. The book fell open to a page of archaic characters that challenged even his graduate students. The room leaned forward as Kesha studied the text for 30 seconds. This is from Lady Murasaki's diary, she said quietly. She's writing about autumn maple leaves floating on water, but she's really describing how beautiful things die when they're separated from their roots. Kesha looked up at Harrison. She was sad because court politics forced her away from her family. The book tumbled from Harrison's nerveless fingers. Dr. Morrison's eyes widened. You didn't just translate the words. You understood the subtext, the emotional context, the historical background. Grandmama told me stories about the Heian court ladies, Kesha explained. She said they wrote their hearts in poetry because speaking the truth was dangerous for women. Maria Williams stood frozen by the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Pride and terror warred in her chest as she watched her daughter's secret gift expose itself to a room full of strangers. Harrison stared at the calligraphy, then at Kesha, then back at the perfect brushstrokes that mocked everything he thought he knew about talent, privilege, and who deserved respect. His entire worldview was crumbling, and this 12-year-old girl was holding the hammer. The memory hit Kesha like warm sunlight through kitchen windows. 5 years old, standing on a wooden stool beside Grandmama Akiko's weathered hands. The old woman's fingers guided the brush with infinite patience, teaching stroke by stroke. In Japan, they threw stones at me for loving your grandfather, Grandmama had whispered in accented English, called me a traitor for marrying black American soldier. But love creates bridges where others see only walls, Kesha-chan. Every afternoon after school meant calligraphy lessons at the tiny kitchen table. While other children watched cartoons, Kesha learned that each character carried centuries of meaning. Grandmama's voice would soften as she shared stories of ancient poets, court ladies, and warriors who found beauty in darkness. Language is not just words, little one. It carries the soul of a people. When I teach you, my ancestors speak through me to you. The lesson stopped 2 years ago. Cancer took Grandmama slowly, but not before extracting a promise from her 8-year-old granddaughter. Your gift must not die with me, Kesha-chan. Promise you will use it to build bridges between hearts that fear each other. Since then, Kesha had hidden her abilities. At school, speaking Japanese made her weird. Kids whispered about the fake Asian girl who thought she was special. Teachers looked skeptical when she mentioned her heritage, so she learned to be invisible. Maria worked 3 cleaning jobs now, Professor Harrison's house on Mondays, the law firm downtown on weekends, office buildings through the week. Kesha did homework in waiting rooms and empty hallways, carrying Grandmama's lessons like secret treasures. She'd watched her mother scrub toilets while wealthy clients discussed their children's expensive tutors and overseas trips. Watched Maria's shoulders curve under the weight of being unseen, unheard, unvalued. But tonight, something in Professor Harrison's cruel laughter shattered her careful invisibility. Grandmama's voice echoed in her memory. "Courage is not absence of fear, Kesha-chan. Courage is love stronger than fear." Standing in this room full of educated strangers who saw only the maid's daughter, Kesha felt her grandmother's spirit flowing through her fingers into every brushstroke. This was bigger than pride. This was keeping a promise to the woman who'd sacrificed everything to ensure her granddaughter could build bridges in a world that preferred walls. Harrison's hands trembled as he set down his phone. Google confirmed every translation, every cultural reference, every impossible detail this 12-year-old had just demonstrated. "This has to be some kind of trick," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Dr. Morrison stood, wine forgotten. "David, I think we need to—" "No." Harrison's academic pride flared like a wounded animal. "Anyone can memorize a few poems. Real expertise requires spontaneous comprehension." He stalked to his bookshelf, pulling down his most challenging text. If she's truly this skilled, she can handle graduate-level material. The leather-bound volume landed on the coffee table with authority. Classical Japanese legal documents from the Tokugawa period, texts that made his PhD students weep. "Translate this," Harrison commanded, pointing to a dense paragraph of archaic characters. "No preparation, no looking anything up." Maria stepped forward, fear cracking her voice. "Professor Harrison, please." "She's just a child." "It's okay, Mama," Kesha said softly. She approached the book like it was a sleeping dragon that might wake and devour her. The room held its breath as she studied the page. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Harrison's smirk began returning. Then Kesha spoke. "This is a merchant contract from 1647. A rice trader in Edo is agreeing to deliver specific quantities during the harvest season." Her finger traced the characters. "But there's a hidden clause here. If the harvest fails, he can substitute grain from his private reserves at triple the price." Harrison's smirk died. "The legal language is deliberately confusing," Kesha continued. "It's designed to trap the buyer into accepting unfavorable terms. The merchant was probably cheating farmers who couldn't read classical Japanese well enough to understand the contract." Dr. Morrison's wine glass hit the floor, crystal shattering. "David, do you realize what she just did? She didn't just translate, she analyzed legal strategy from a 400-year-old document." "Lucky guess," Harrison said weakly, but sweat beaded his forehead. "The next paragraph discusses currency exchange rates between copper coins and silver," Kesha added helpfully. "And there's a note in the margin about bribing local officials. Grandmama taught me that corruption was common in the merchant class during that period." A guest fumbled for her phone, recording everything. "This is incredible. She's explaining historical context that most professors don't know." Harrison grabbed another book, then another. Medieval poetry, modern business contracts, classical philosophy. Each text Kesha approached with calm confidence, unraveling meanings that had taken him years to master. "Stop," he finally croaked. Books scattered around him like fallen soldiers. "This is impossible." "Why is it impossible, Professor?" Kesha asked with genuine curiosity. "Because I'm young, because I'm black, because my mother cleans your house?" The question hung in the air like incense, heavy and inescapable. Dr. Morrison knelt beside Kesha, her voice filled with wonder. "How long did your grandmother teach you?" "Every day from when I was 5 until she passed 2 years ago," Kesha replied. "She said language was the only inheritance she could give me that no one could steal." Harrison stared at the books, at the perfect calligraphy, at this child who just shattered every assumption he'd built his career upon. His phone buzzed, text from a colleague. "Just saw the video online. That kid is making you look like an amateur." The video was already spreading, and Harrison realized his humiliation was just beginning. Harrison's phone exploded with notifications. The video had gone viral. 12-year-old Maid's daughter outsmarts professor in Japanese, racking up thousands of views and comments that grew more damning by the minute. "Embarrassing for the prof," read one. "The kid knows more than her teacher," said another. How does a janitor's daughter speak better Japanese than a university professor? By morning, Harrison's humiliation had crystallized into rage. He called Maria before 7 a.m., his voice sharp as winter wind. "Mrs. Williams, we need to discuss your daughter's inappropriate behavior last night." Maria's hands shook as she answered, still in her cleaning uniform from the overnight shift at the law firm. "Sir, I don't understand. She made my guests uncomfortable with her showing off," Harrison snapped. "Academic gatherings aren't entertainment venues for children to perform party tricks." "Party tricks?" Maria's voice cracked. "Professor, she was just answering your question. Don't lecture me about what happened in my own home." Harrison's words cut like glass. "Your job is to clean, not to let your daughter interrupt serious academic discussion. If this happens again, I'll need to find a new cleaning service." The line went dead. Maria stared at her phone. 20 years of humiliation burning in her chest. She'd scrubbed Harrison's toilets while he pontificated about respect and education. Now he was threatening her livelihood because her daughter was too smart for his comfort. At Columbia University, Harrison's colleagues whispered in hallways, "Did you see the video? Poor David looked completely outclassed. By a 12-year-old no less. How embarrassing. Makes you wonder what else these working-class kids could teach us if we bothered to notice them." That last comment made Harrison's jaw clench. He cornered Dr. Morrison after the faculty meeting. "Helen, about last night. David, that child is extraordinary. We should be discussing how to nurture her talent, not... We should be discussing proper academic channels," Harrison interrupted. "There are protocols for assessing student abilities. We can't just accept party tricks as legitimate scholarship." Dr. Morrison studied his face. "You're not questioning her ability. You're questioning her right to have it. Don't psychoanalyze me. I'm simply maintaining academic standards." "Academic standards? She demonstrated mastery that most of your graduate students would envy." Harrison's voice turned poisonous. "Graduate students who've earned their place through proper channels, who's paid tuition, who belongs in academic spaces." He leaned closer. "Not children who happen to memorize a few phrases while their mothers mop floors." The words hung between them like toxic smoke. "David," Dr. Morrison said quietly, "you're scared. That little girl made you feel small, and now you're trying to cut her down to size." Meanwhile, at Jefferson Middle School, Kesha sat alone at lunch. Word had spread about the viral video. Some classmates thought it was cool. Others whispered that she was fake or showing off. "Think she's better than us now?" muttered Jessica Carter from the popular table. "Acting all smart and special." Mrs. Rodriguez, Kesha's teacher, pulled her aside after math class. "Kesha, I saw the video online. Is it real? Do you actually speak Japanese that well?" The question stung. Even her teacher doubted her. That evening, Maria found Kesha crying in her bedroom, homework abandoned. "Mama, maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Everyone thinks I'm weird now, and Professor Harrison might fire you because of me." Maria held her daughter close, her own tears falling silently. Outside their window, Harrison's world of privilege and prejudice pressed down like storm clouds, threatening to crush the small miracle of her daughter's gift. Friday afternoon. Dr. Morrison's phone rang with panic in her department head's voice. "Helen, we have a crisis. The Yamamoto delegation arrives Monday for the partnership signing, but our translator just had a stroke. Every professional in the city is booked for the UN summit." Dr. Morrison stared out her office window at students crossing campus. "What about automated translation software? Are you kidding? This is a $50 million research partnership with Tokyo University. One cultural misstep could destroy years of negotiations." The weight of institutional reputation pressed down like concrete. Columbia's future relationship with Japan's most prestigious university hung in the balance. Careers would end if this failed. Then Morrison remembered small hands creating perfect calligraphy. I might know someone. 2 hours later, she stood outside the Williams family's modest apartment, heart pounding. Maria answered the door, surprise flickering across her tired face. "Dr. Morrison, is everything all right? I need to ask you and Kesha an enormous favor, but I'll understand if you say no." She explained the situation, the delegation, the stakes, the impossible request she was about to make. Maria's eyes widened. "You want my 12-year-old daughter to translate for Tokyo University?" "Not officially. She'd be my assistant, taking notes. But if the conversation gets complex... Morrison met Maria's gaze. Your daughter might be our only hope. Kesha emerged from her bedroom, homework still in hand. When Morrison explained, the girl's face grew serious beyond her years. If I mess up, people could lose their jobs? Yes. And Columbia might lose the partnership? Possibly. Kesha was quiet for a long moment. Then, Grandmama always said her gift should build bridges. This sounds like a big bridge. Monday morning arrived, gray and tense. The Columbia conference room gleamed under fluorescent lights as administrators in expensive suits fidgeted with presentation materials. Dr. Yamamoto led the Japanese delegation, 5 distinguished professors whose combined expertise represented centuries of scholarship. They spoke in rapid, formal Japanese that carried the weight of institutional tradition. The backup translator, hastily flown in from Chicago, began sweating within minutes. He caught basic meanings but missed cultural subtleties that made administrators wince. During a critical discussion about research ethics, disaster struck. Dokyu no mondai ga arimasu, Dr. Yamamoto said carefully. The translator panicked. They say there's a problem with levels? The room tensed. Was this a rejection? A complaint? $50 million hung on the meaning of those words. Morrison felt Kesha's small hand touch her arm. The girl leaned close and whispered, He's not complaining. He's saying they have a question about equivalency, making sure both universities contribute equally to the research. It's about fairness, not problems. Morrison smoothly redirected, Dr. Yamamoto, we absolutely want to ensure equal partnership. Could you elaborate on the equivalency structure you have in mind? Dr. Yamamoto's face brightened. Ah, yes, perfect understanding. The conversation flowed forward, crisis averted. For 2 hours, Kesha quietly fed Morrison corrections and clarifications. When formal language grew archaic, when cultural references flew over the translator's head, when emotional subtext mattered more than literal words, the 12-year-old guided the conversation with invisible expertise. The partnership agreement was signed in duplicate, both universities celebrating what they called unprecedented cultural understanding. As the delegation prepared to leave, Dr. Yamamoto approached Morrison. Your cultural sensitivity today was remarkable. You understood nuances that even some Japanese speakers miss. Morrison glanced at Kesha, who was quietly packing her school backpack. We had excellent guidance. That night, Morrison called the department head. The partnership is secure. Better than secure. They want to expand the collaboration. How did you pull off a miracle like that? Morrison watched Kesha through her apartment window, doing homework at the kitchen table where her grandmother once taught ancient wisdom. Sometimes miracles come in small packages. Dr. Morrison's hands trembled as she placed the call that would change everything. President Carter, it's Helen Morrison. I need to convene an emergency academic committee meeting. We have a situation that requires immediate attention. Tuesday morning, Columbia's most distinguished faculty gathered in the oak-paneled boardroom. Department heads, tenure review committees, and academic standards officials filled leather chairs worth more than most people's cars. Morrison stood at the head of the table, a manila folder thick with documentation in her hands. Yesterday, a 12-year-old girl saved our $50 million partnership with Tokyo University. Skeptical murmurs rippled through the room. Professor Williams from Classics raised an eyebrow. Helen, with all due respect, let me finish. Morrison opened the folder, spreading photographs of Kesha's calligraphy across the mahogany table. This is graduate-level work, master's level arguably. She played audio recordings from Monday's meeting, pausing each time Kesha's whispered corrections had prevented diplomatic disaster. Without her cultural insights, we would have lost the largest research grant in our department's history. Dean Thompson leaned forward, studying the calligraphy with growing amazement. These brush strokes, the proportional balance, this is professional quality. Gets better, Morrison said, pulling out her laptop. She showed the viral video from Harrison's dinner party, watching distinguished academics' faces transform from skepticism to stunned silence. This child corrected a tenured professor's translations in real time, while sitting on his floor doing homework. President Carter cleared his throat. What exactly are you proposing, Helen? Emergency admission to our Advanced Cultural Studies program. Full scholarship, mentorship track designed specifically for exceptional young talent. The room exploded into debate. Unprecedented? Academic protocols exist for reasons. Can't just bypass normal channels? Morrison slammed her hand on the table. The room fell silent. Normal channels failed us yesterday. Normal channels would have cost us $50 million in international humiliation. Her voice carried 30 years of academic authority. This child demonstrates mastery that took me decades to achieve. We can either nurture that gift or watch another institution claim it. She pulled out her phone, showing emails that had arrived overnight. Harvard's Asian Studies Department already reached out. Princeton sent a preliminary scholarship offer. Yale wants to meet with her next week. Morrison's eyes swept the room. While we debate protocols, our competitors are moving. Dean Thompson studied calligraphy again. The technical skill is undeniable, but she's 12 years old. Mozart was composing symphonies at 12. Morrison interrupted. Picasso was painting masterpieces at 13. Genius doesn't wait for convenient timing. Professor Williams shifted uncomfortably. What about the precedent this sets? We can't admit every child who shows unusual ability. We're not talking about every child. We're talking about once-in-a-generation talent that happens to live in our backyard. Morrison's voice softened. Her grandmother was Akiko Tanaka, granddaughter of the poet Tanaka Michiko. This isn't just raw ability. It's inherited cultural mastery passed down through generations. The room fell silent as the weight of that lineage settled over them. President Carter stood slowly. All in favor of emergency admission and full scholarship for Kesha Williams? Hands rose around the table, one by one until only Professor Harrison remained down, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Motion carries. Carter's gavel struck wood. Welcome to Columbia University, Miss Williams. Outside the boardroom, Morrison smiled as she dialed Maria's number. A bridge had been built. Now it was time to cross it. Thursday evening, Dr. Morrison climbed 3 flights of worn stairs to the Williams family apartment. Her designer heels clicked against chipped linoleum as she knocked on the door marked 3B. Maria answered, still wearing her hospital cleaning uniform from the day shift. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but pride illuminated her face. Dr. Morrison, please come in. The apartment was tiny but immaculate. Second-hand furniture arranged with dignity. A small kitchen table where homework competed for space with medical bills and past-due notices. Kesha sat cross-legged on the couch, surrounded by library books about Japanese history. She looked up with eyes too old for her 12-year-old face. Professor Morrison, Mama told me about the scholarship. I don't understand why you're helping us. Morrison settled beside her, feeling the springs beneath worn cushions. May I tell you a story, Kesha? The girl nodded, closing her book carefully. When I was your age, I lived in a trailer park in West Virginia. My mother cleaned houses. My father worked double shifts at the coal mine. Morrison's voice carried decades of buried pain. I loved languages, but no one expected a coal miner's daughter to speak French or German. Kesha's eyes widened. You were poor too? Very poor. I got into college on scholarship, but professors treated me like I didn't belong. Said my accent was unprofessional. Questioned whether I really understood the material or just memorized it. Maria sat at the kitchen table, listening intently. What changed? Kesha asked. One professor saw past my background, Professor Martinez. She fought for me when others wanted me to fail. Opened doors I didn't even know existed. Morrison touched Kesha's hand. She taught me that talent doesn't care about your zip code. Kesha was quiet for a moment. Is that why you're helping me? Because someone helped you? Partly, but mostly because you remind me that brilliance can bloom anywhere. Morrison pulled a small wrapped package from her purse. This belonged to your grandmother. Kesha's hands trembled as she unwrapped faded silk. Inside lay a delicate brush set, handles worn smooth by decades of use. Professor Harrison found it among her belongings after she passed. He was going to throw it away, but his housekeeper saved it. When I told her about you, she insisted I return it. Tears spilled down Kesha's cheeks as she held the brushes. These were Grandmama's? She would be so proud of you, honey. Maria wiped her eyes. Dr. Morrison, I don't know how to thank you. Help other children like Kesha. When you succeed, and you will, Remember, there are other kids sitting on floors doing homework while their mothers clean houses. See them. Believe in them. Kesha looked up from her grandmother's brushes. Will you teach me how to be brave like you? Morrison smiled through her own tears. Sweetheart, you're already braver than I ever was. The email arrived on a Friday morning that would change everything. International Youth Cultural Exchange Summit cordially invites Miss Kesha Williams to represent American understanding of Japanese culture before the Global Education Council. Live broadcast to 47 countries. November 15th, 2 p.m. EST. Dr. Morrison stared at her screen. This wasn't just an honor. It was a trial by fire that would either launch Kesha into international recognition or destroy her before the world's eyes. They want her to demonstrate mastery across multiple traditional arts, Morrison explained to Maria over coffee. Calligraphy, poetry composition, cultural presentation, and real-time kwanda with master teachers from Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. Maria's coffee cup rattled against the saucer. She's 12 years old, Helen. This sounds like something for graduate students. The Japanese delegation specifically requested her after Monday's success. They called her understanding remarkably pure for someone so young. But Morrison didn't mention the other email, the one from Professor Harrison volunteering to supervise Kesha's performance. His wounded pride had festered into something dangerous, and she feared his true motives. The week before the summit, Harrison appeared at every practice session, his criticism sharp as winter wind. Your brush angle is wrong, Kesha. Masters will notice immediately. That poem lacks sophistication. You sound like a child. Your pronunciation has an American accent. Embarrassing for international broadcast. Each comment landed like stones thrown at glass. Kesha's confidence, so strong during the university meeting, began cracking under constant correction. Dr. Morrison watched Harrison's psychological warfare with growing alarm. David, perhaps constructive feedback would be more helpful. I'm ensuring she doesn't humiliate our institution, Harrison snapped. This child carries Columbia's reputation. Every mistake reflects on us. The night before the summit, Kesha couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, grandmother's brushes untouched before her. Mama, what if I mess up? What if Professor Harrison is right and I'm not good enough? Maria knelt beside her daughter, remembering her own mother's wisdom. Baby, your grandmama once told me something. She said fear makes us smaller, but love makes us larger than life. I'm scared, Mama. Good, being scared means this matters to you. Summit Day arrived gray and tense. Columbia's media center transformed into a technological marvel, cameras, lights, and broadcast equipment worth more than the Williams family's annual income. The Global Education Council assembled virtually. Master teachers, university presidents, and cultural ambassadors from 6 continents. Their collective expertise represented centuries of scholarship. Kesha entered wearing her best dress, a simple blue outfit Maria had bought secondhand but pressed to perfection. She carried grandmother's brush set in a worn canvas bag. Professor Harrison positioned himself prominently in the background, his presence looming like storm clouds. The broadcast began. Today, we witnessed something unprecedented, announced Dr. Yamamoto from Tokyo University. A 12-year-old American will demonstrate cultural mastery traditionally achieved only after decades of study. The first challenge: create original calligraphy while explaining its cultural significance. Kesha approached the paper with trembling hands. Harrison's criticisms echoed in her mind. Every stroke felt wrong. Her confidence evaporated under 47 countries' collective gaze. The brush feels heavy in my hands, she began hesitantly, because I carry the weight of my grandmother's legacy. But as ink touched paper, something shifted. Grandmother's voice seemed to whisper through her fingers. Courage is love stronger than fear. The trembling stopped. Her strokes became fluid, confident. She wrote not with Harrison's technical perfection, but with emotional authenticity that made the camera operators lean forward. This character means bridge, she explained, her voice growing stronger. But in traditional calligraphy, the way you write it matters as much as what it says. These strokes connect like relationships, some strong, some delicate, all necessary. Dr. Yamamoto's face appeared on the monitor, his expression shifting from polite attention to genuine amazement. The second challenge: Compose and recite original poetry in classical Japanese style. Kesha closed her eyes, remembering grandmother's kitchen lessons. When she spoke, her words carried the rhythm of centuries. Small hands hold ancient wisdom. Love builds what hatred destroys. Grandmother's voice in granddaughter's heart. Bridge spanning two worlds. Silence stretched across continents. Then Dr. Sato from Kyoto University spoke. The emotional authenticity transcends technical skill. This child understands our culture's heart, not just its form. Harrison's face darkened. His carefully planned supervision was becoming irrelevant. The final challenge arrived like Judgment Day. Open questions from master teachers. Miss Williams, Dr. Nakamura from Osaka began, explain the concept of mono no aware, the pathos of things. This was graduate-level philosophy. Harrison smirked, certain Kesha would finally fail. But Kesha didn't reach for textbook definitions. Instead, she spoke from her 12-year-old heart. Mono not aware is like watching cherry blossoms fall. You're happy because they're beautiful, but sad because beauty doesn't last forever. Grandmama taught me that missing someone you love isn't just sadness, it's proof that love is real. The monitor filled with nodding heads. Master teachers exchanged glances of wonder. And how does this philosophy apply to your own life? Pressed Dr. Yamamoto. Kesha looked directly into the camera, her young face serious with inherited wisdom. I miss my grandmother every day, but when I write with her brushes, she's not really gone. The beauty we shared lives in my hands now. Mono not aware teaches us that endings make beginnings precious. The broadcast center fell silent except for camera hums and distant traffic. Dr. Yamamoto spoke slowly. In 60 years of teaching, I have rarely encountered such profound understanding from someone so young. Miss Williams, your grandmother would be immensely proud. Tears rolled down Kesha's cheeks, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming recognition that she'd honored her promise. Harrison stood frozen in the background, his plans for subtle sabotage crumbling. The child he'd tried to diminish had just demonstrated mastery that humbled international experts. The final question came from Dr. Sato. What do you hope to achieve with your gift? Kesha wiped her eyes and smiled with 12-year-old hope that could move mountains. I want to help people understand each other the way Grandmama taught me, build bridges where other people see walls. Maybe if we understand each other's hearts, we won't be so scared of each other's differences. The screen filled with master teachers rising to their feet in simultaneous bow, the highest honor in Japanese culture. 47 countries witnessed a 12-year-old maid's daughter receive recognition that tenured professors spent lifetimes pursuing. And in that moment, Harrison realized his humiliation was complete. The Columbia University auditorium had never seen anything like it. 3 weeks after the international broadcast, the same lecture hall where Professor Harrison had first mocked Kesha now overflowed with media, dignitaries, and academics from around the world. Camera crews lined the walls. Reuters, BBC, CNN, every major outlet wanted to witness what they called the greatest academic reversal in modern history. Kesha sat in the front row, overwhelmed by the magnitude of attention. She wore the same blue dress from the broadcast, but Maria had added a special touch, a silk scarf that had belonged to Grandmama Akiko, now draped around her daughter's shoulders like an ancestral blessing. Dr. Morrison approached the podium, her voice carrying across the packed auditorium. Today we gather not just to honor exceptional talent, but to acknowledge our own failures of vision. 3 weeks ago, many of us would have looked at Kesha Williams and seen only the cleaning lady's daughter. Today, the world knows her as a cultural bridge builder whose wisdom humbles us all. Applause thundered through the hall, but Morrison raised her hand for silence. Before we celebrate, we must confront an uncomfortable truth. Genius walked among us for years, invisible because we couldn't see past our own prejudices. The cameras turned toward Professor Harrison, seated in the back row. His face had aged a decade in 3 weeks. The viral footage of his initial mockery had destroyed his reputation, spawning memes and social media posts about academic arrogance that would follow him forever. David Harrison, Morrison continued, would you join us on stage? The auditorium held its breath as Harrison stood slowly. His walk to the podium felt like a funeral march, the death of his old self under public scrutiny. He approached the microphone with trembling hands. 3 weeks ago, I asked a 12-year-old girl if she could even spell in Japanese. His voice cracked. I asked this question because I saw her beneath me, unworthy of respect because of her age, her race, her mother's profession. Kesha watched from the front row, her young face serious but not vindictive. I was wrong. Catastrophically, shamefully wrong. Harrison's tears came freely now. Kesha Williams possesses knowledge that surpasses my own, but more importantly, she possesses grace I've never shown. She forgave me when I deserved only condemnation. He turned toward Kesha, his voice breaking. I'm sorry, Kesha, not just for underestimating you, but for trying to diminish your light when it outshone my own. You are everything I pretended to be, a true scholar, a cultural ambassador, a builder of bridges I've spent my career burning. Harrison stepped away from the microphone, his public apology complete. Dr. Morrison returned to the podium as the Japanese delegation took the stage. Dr. Yamamoto carried an ornate wooden box that commanded reverent silence. In Japan, we have a ceremony called Recognition of True Mastery, Dr. Yamamoto announced. This honor is typically reserved for artists who dedicate lifetimes to their craft. Today, we bestow it upon someone who achieved mastery through love, not time. He opened the box, revealing a calligraphy brush unlike any other. The handle was carved from ancient bamboo, decorated with gold symbols that caught the auditorium lights like captured stars. This brush belonged to Master Sesshu, the greatest calligrapher in Japanese history. For 5 centuries, it has been reserved for those who understand that art flows from the heart, not the hand. Kesha's eyes widened as Dr. Yamamoto knelt before her, a master teacher bowing to a 12-year-old student. Miss Williams, this brush chooses its own master. It has chosen you. The auditorium erupted as Kesha received the brush with hands that seemed too small for such honor. Maria sobbed in the front row, remembering her mother's prediction that Kesha would build bridges the world needed. But the surprises weren't finished. Dr. Morrison approached the microphone with another announcement that silenced the crowd. Tokyo University has offered Kesha a full scholarship for advanced studies, the youngest student in their 150-year history. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Oxford have made similar offers. She paused, letting the magnitude sink in. But Kesha has made a different choice. The auditorium buzzed with confusion. What could be better than those prestigious opportunities? She's chosen to stay here at Columbia to help us create something unprecedented, the Akiko Williams Center for Hidden Talent Recognition, a program dedicated to finding genius in unexpected places. The applause was deafening, but Kesha stood and walked to the microphone, the ancient brush cradled in her young hands. When Grandmama taught me calligraphy, she said every stroke connects to every other stroke. Nothing stands alone. Her voice carried across the auditorium with startling maturity. I'm not the only kid with hidden gifts. There are others like me, children whose parents clean buildings while they dream impossible dreams. She looked directly at the cameras broadcasting worldwide. Maybe there's a boy in Detroit whose father drives trucks, but who understands science better than his teachers. Maybe there's a girl in rural Mississippi whose grandmother taught her advanced math while everyone else saw only poverty. The auditorium fell silent as profound truth settled over them. The Akiko Williams Center will find them. We'll look in places universities never thought to search, because genius doesn't live only in fancy neighborhoods with perfect test scores. Kesha held up the ancient brush, its gold decorations catching stage lights. Grandmama always said her greatest masterpiece wasn't any painting she created. It was the love she gave me. Now I want to give that love to other children who feel invisible. She paused, remembering the promise made at a kitchen table years ago. Every child deserves someone who sees their light, someone who believes their dreams matter, someone who helps them build bridges instead of walls. The standing ovation lasted 7 minutes. Cameras captured tears on faces of academics, journalists, and viewers around the world. But the most important moment happened when Maria joined her daughter on stage, wearing Grandmama's preserved traditional dress for the first time since the funeral. 3 generations of women, past, present, and future, united in the understanding that love transcends every boundary society constructs. Professor Harrison watched from the back, his own tears falling as he realized he'd witnessed something rarer than genius, the moment when talent meets purpose and changes the world. The ceremony concluded with Kesha creating one final calligraphy piece, using Master Seshu's brush for the first time. She wrote two beautiful characters that seemed to glow under the stage lights. "This means hope," she explained to the hushed auditorium. "Grandmama taught me that hope is a wish that refuses to die no matter how hard life gets." As ink dried on rice paper, 47 countries understood they'd witnessed more than academic recognition. They'd witnessed the birth of a movement that would find brilliance in the most unlikely places and give it wings to soar. 2 years later, the Akiko Williams Center occupied an entire floor of Columbia University's newest building. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows as 14-year-old Kesha walked past walls covered with photos and success stories. Marcus from Detroit, whose truck driver father now watched his son study astrophysics at MIT. Sophia from rural Georgia, whose janitor mother cried when Harvard called with a full scholarship offer. David from Chinatown, whose restaurant worker parents never imagined their son would become Columbia's youngest mathematics prodigy. Each photo represented a hidden genius discovered in laundromats, school cafeterias, hospital waiting rooms, places where brilliant children waited while their parents worked invisible jobs. Kesha paused at her favorite picture. Professor Harrison teaching calligraphy to a group of 8-year-olds at a community center in Harlem. His transformation from arrogant academic to humble advocate had become legendary. "The afternoon group is here," Dr. Morrison called from the main classroom. As Kesha entered, 12 eager faces looked up from their practice papers. These children came from housing projects and trailer parks, but their eyes blazed with hunger for knowledge. "Today we're going to learn about bridges," Kesha announced. "Not the kind that crosses rivers, but the kind that connects hearts." 8-year-old Carmen raised her hand. "Miss Kesha, my mama says I shouldn't get too big for my britches. She's scared that if I act too smart, people won't like me." Kesha knelt beside Carmen's desk. "Your mama loves you and wants to protect you, but being smart isn't something to hide. It's something to share. The world needs your gifts, Carmen. But here's the most important thing," Kesha continued. "When you succeed, and you will succeed, remember the children still sitting where you sit today. Reach back and pull them up with you." The class ended with excited chatter about artwork and dreams. As children filed out with their parents, construction workers, housekeepers, security guards, Kesha watched through windows with quiet satisfaction. Her phone buzzed. "Hidden Talent Recognition Program now operating in 47 states. Over 3,000 children identified and supported." Dr. Morrison approached with news. "3 universities called today. Full scholarship offers for your early admission program." "What did you tell them?" "That you're exactly where you belong. For now." As evening fell over Columbia, Kesha thought of Grandmama Akiko, who'd sacrificed everything to ensure her granddaughter could build bridges in a world obsessed with walls. Now let me ask you something. How many Keshas work in your office building? How many brilliant children sit quietly in corners while their parents clean, cook, or guard the places where you work and live? Today, right now, there's a child whose mother stocks grocery shelves, but who could revolutionize medicine. A kid whose father drives delivery trucks, but who understands computer programming better than most adults. A young girl whose grandmother cleans hotel rooms, but who has the artistic vision to change how we see beauty. They're everywhere, waiting, hoping someone will notice their light. Here's what you can do. See the whole person, not just their job title. When the custodian's daughter comes to work with her mom, don't just smile politely. Ask about her interests. Listen to her dreams. You might discover the next great scientist, artist, or innovator. Support programs in your community that recognize talent regardless of economic background. Volunteer at after-school centers. Mentor children whose parents work multiple jobs to survive. Share this story. Tag someone who needs to hear about Kesha Williams. Comment below. I see myself in this story if Kesha's journey moved you. Most importantly, remember that genius doesn't come with a dress code. It doesn't live only in wealthy neighborhoods or prestigious schools. Sometimes it's sitting on your floor, quietly doing homework while the grown-ups talk. The next time you encounter a child from a working family, ask yourself, what if this is the next Kesha Williams? because somewhere tonight, there's a 12-year-old with a gift that could change the world. The question isn't whether they exist. The question is, will you be brave enough to see them? Like this video if Kesha's story inspired you. Subscribe for more stories about people who prove that talent has no address. And share this with someone who might be the next person to discover hidden genius in an unexpected place. Because every child deserves someone who believes in their impossible dreams.